Hello, dear friends, and welcome back to NPA Discovery, the place where we explore the untold stories of extraordinary lives, uncover the human truth behind the headlines, and celebrate resilience in the face of unimaginable challenges. Before we begin, I want to ask you to hit the like button, share this video with someone who loves Hollywood history, and subscribe if you haven't already. Your support truly fuels our work and keeps these incredible stories coming. Now, imagine being born into the kind of family where talent flows like oxygen, where your very name carries the weight of expectation, but behind the glamour, there's a storm brewing. That was the reality for Liza Minnelli, daughter of the incomparable Judy Garland and celebrated director Vincente Minnelli. Our title today suggests something bold, that Liza Minnelli refused to break despite a life shadowed by loss, betrayal, and the relentless pressure of fame. And I want to make it clear, I agree with that sentiment. Not because Liza's life was a straight line of triumph, but because her story proves that strength is not the absence of weakness. It's the act of standing up one more time than you fall. Let's step into her world. Born into a legend's shadow. Liza was born on March 12, 1946, in Hollywood, California. But she wasn't just another child of the golden age. She was Hollywood royalty from the second she opened her eyes. Her mother, Judy Garland, was fresh off the high of The Wizard of Oz, and her father, Vincente Minnelli, was the visionary behind classics like Meet Me in St. Louis and An American in Paris. To the world, it must have seemed like Liza had won life's lottery, beauty, talent, and a family name that opened every door. But as so many of you know, when the curtains close, the truth can be very different. Behind the camera flashes, Judy Garland was already grappling with her own demons, a cocktail of pressure, exhaustion, and dependence on substances that studio executives had introduced her to when she was barely a teenager. Liza grew up not just watching her mother perform, but also watching her struggle. One story from her childhood illustrates this perfectly. Liza once recalled a day when Judy locked herself in the bathroom after an argument. Hours passed. For a little girl, that kind of silence becomes unbearable. Liza panicked, convinced her mother had done something terrible. Desperate, she grabbed a pair of scissors and cut through the screen on the bathroom window, peering inside, only to find Judy alive, sitting there. The young Liza made a startling realization: sometimes, her mother's crises weren't about danger, but about wanting to be seen and heard.
It's moments like these that shape a child. Imagine being barely old enough to read, yet already understanding that love could mean managing someone else's storms. That's a heavy emotional education, one that would follow her into every relationship she ever had. Childhood in motion. Liza's upbringing was anything but ordinary. After her parents divorced in 1951, she spent her life moving between worlds, the bright chaos of movie sets, the glamour of opening nights, and the often lonely quiet of hotel rooms while her mother worked. She made her first film appearance at just 3 years old, alongside Judy in The Good Old Summertime. It wasn't a starring role, but it planted the seed. The applause, the lights, the magic, it was intoxicating. But here's the twist: as much as Judy adored her daughter, she wasn't always encouraging. When Liza announced she wanted to follow in her footsteps, Judy's advice wasn't the warm, "I believe in you," we might hope for. Instead, she said, "Now don't get upset if they compare you to me." Let's pause here. Imagine hearing that from your parent, not outright discouragement, but a reminder that you'll always be measured against them. It's like stepping onto the field knowing you'll never be allowed to play your own game. Many of us have felt this in some form, maybe at work, in school, or even in our families, where our worth feels chained to someone else's legacy. First steps into the spotlight. At 18, Liza convinced her mother to let her share the stage during Judy's performance at the London Palladium. When Judy introduced her, "And now, Miss Liza Minnelli," the audience greeted her with polite applause. No fireworks. But then, she sang. And by the time the song ended, the crowd was on their feet. It should have been a perfect moment between mother and daughter, the passing of the torch. Instead, according to some accounts, Judy smiled tightly, pulled her daughter off stage, and didn't exactly shower her with praise. Here's the thing, parents are human. And in Judy's case, she was a woman fighting her own insecurities, even toward her own child. But for Liza, this was one of many lessons: success doesn't always win you love, even from the people you most want it from. Love and illusions. Not long after that Palladium performance, Liza met a charming Australian performer named Peter Allen. Handsome, talented, and charismatic, he seemed like a dream. Their romance moved quickly, and by 1967, just before her 21st birthday, they were married. From the outside, it looked like a fairy tale. They lived a bohemian, glittering life, the kind that sounds like it belongs in a movie montage: champagne, celebrity parties, and nights filled with music. But behind the scenes, cracks were forming. And here's where the real lesson comes in: sometimes, love stories we think are about forever are really about teaching us what we don't yet know about ourselves. The role that changed everything. By the late 60s, Liza was already a Broadway darling, but she had her eyes on Hollywood. One role in particular had captured her imagination: Pookie Adams, the eccentric, fast-talking lead in The Sterile Cuckoo. When she landed the part, she was thrilled. But in a decision she would later regret, she sent the script to her mother, Judy Garland, for feedback. Judy's reaction? Far from supportive. She reportedly asked, "Why would you want to play this? How could you possibly understand a screwed-up, neurotic girl?" It's hard not to see the irony in that comment, given that Liza's own childhood had been filled with complicated emotions and instability. But Liza held her ground, insisting that she understood the role, perhaps more than her mother realized. And she was right. The Sterile Cuckoo earned her an Academy Award nomination, proof that her instincts could be trusted. This is a lesson we can all take: sometimes the people we love most won't see our vision, and we have to go forward anyway. The loss that changed her forever. Just as her career was gaining momentum, tragedy struck. In 1969, Judy Garland died from an accidental overdose at the age of 47. For the world, it was the loss of a legend. For Liza, it was the loss of a mother she had loved fiercely, and battled with in equal measure. She had watched Judy's decline firsthand: the erratic behavior, the fragile health, the moments of brilliance shadowed by pain. Her response was to bury herself in work. She signed on to play Sally Bowles in the film adaptation of Cabaret, working under director Bob Fosse on what would become one of the most grueling sets in movie history. Filming in Berlin, she studied silent-era actresses, scoured vintage photographs, and transformed herself into the embodiment of 1930s Berlin nightlife. Her performance would become iconic, but behind the scenes, her personal life was coming apart. The shattering truth about Peter Allen. While filming Cabaret, Liza began a public affair with music producer Rex Kramer, an act some say was retaliation for her growing suspicion that something was off in her marriage. Her intuition wasn't wrong. One day, she returned home unexpectedly and found Peter Allen in bed with someone else. That someone else was a man. Years later, Liza would joke about the incident, saying, "Let me put it this way, I'll never surprise anybody coming home again." But humor can be a mask for hurt. This wasn't just infidelity, it was the shattering of the entire romantic story she'd been telling herself. Worse still, she later learned that Peter had carried on a relationship with her own stepfather, Mark Herron. After a long separation, they divorced in 1974. And yet, this was not the end of Liza's willingness to risk her heart. It's one of the traits that makes her story so human. No matter how many times she was hurt, she kept searching for connection. Triumph on the biggest stage. If her private life was in tatters, her career was soaring. Cabaret wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural phenomenon. Liza's portrayal of Sally Bowles won her the Academy Award for Best Actress, beating out heavyweights like Diana Ross and Maggie Smith. For a brief moment, she was on top of the world. But as so many stars discover, the higher the climb, the sharper the fall. In the years that followed, a string of box office flops damaged her bankability. By the late 1970s, she was being called box office poison, a label that Hollywood rarely forgives. And yet, she kept working. she pushed harder. And, like her mother before her, she leaned on alcohol and pills to get through the exhaustion. Searching for stability. Liza's romantic life mirrored her professional highs and lows. She married again, this time to director Jack Haley Jr., but the union dissolved within 5 years. In 1973, she began a relationship with Desi Arnaz Jr., the son of Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. But Lucille Ball reportedly disapproved, seeing Liza as a bad influence on her son. The relationship didn't last. Through it all, Liza cycled through high-profile romances with men like director Martin Scorsese and comedian Peter Sellers. These relationships, like so many in Hollywood, burned brightly but briefly. It's here that I think we see one of the most relatable aspects of her life, that restless search for home in another person, even when we haven't yet built that home within ourselves. The price of the spotlight. By the mid-1970s, the constant cycle of work, parties, and personal upheaval was taking a toll. Liza's substance use escalated until, by the early 1980s, she was in a full-blown battle with addiction. In 1984, at a breaking point, she entered rehab with the support of her father. This was the first of several times she would seek treatment, a reminder that recovery isn't a straight path, but a journey of starts, setbacks, and renewed effort. Love, marriage, and heartbreak. In 1979, Liza married sculptor Mark Jarrow, son of Broadway stage designer Peter Jarrow. Unlike her previous whirlwind romances, this relationship lasted over a decade, making it her longest marriage. The two shared genuine affection, but Liza longed for something more than companionship. She desperately wanted to be a mother. She became pregnant several times during their marriage, but each pregnancy ended in miscarriage, one of them nearly costing her life. The emotional toll was enormous. Friends recall that she threw herself even deeper into work after each loss, as though constant motion might dull the ache of what she couldn't have. And yet, there's a remarkable tenderness in how she has spoken about that time. She once said, "If I can't be a mother, I can at least make people feel joy." That's something, isn't it? It's a profound reflection, a choice to transform private grief into public generosity. The role that slipped away. The 1980s brought both new opportunities and bitter disappointments. One of the most painful came when she was considered for the role of Eva Peron in the 1996 film adaptation of Evita. She had the voice, the theatricality, and a passionate connection to the material. But the studio wanted someone with a more youthful image, and ultimately, Madonna was cast. Rejection is hard for anyone, but for Liza, it wasn't just a lost role, it was a reminder that Hollywood's love can be fickle. Still, she kept moving, performing in concerts and stage productions, reminding the world that she was more than just a movie star. The final marriage, and scandal. In 2002, Liza married concert promoter David Jest in a lavish ceremony attended by more than 800 guests, including Michael Jackson and Elizabeth Taylor. The event was tabloid gold, the gowns, the guest list, the sheer spectacle. But the fairy tale unraveled quickly. By 2003, the couple was locked in a vicious divorce battle, trading accusations of abuse and misconduct. Jest sued Liza, claiming she had physically assaulted him. She countersued, alleging he had stolen money from her. The public nature of the feud left Liza humiliated, her personal struggles once again splashed across headlines. For many celebrities, this would have been the breaking point. But for Liza, it was another storm to weather. A survivor's perspective. In the years that followed, Liza focused on selective performances, charity work, and living life on her own terms. Her health issues, including multiple hip surgeries and ongoing rehabilitation, slowed her pace, but not her spirit. She has been candid about her battles with addiction, relationships, and illness, sometimes with humor, sometimes with raw honesty. One of her most memorable quotes comes from an interview late in her career: "I've learned that life doesn't get easier. You just get stronger, if you let yourself." And that, I think, is the essence of Liza Minnelli. The last curtain calls. In the 2010s, Liza performed less frequently, partly due to health setbacks, but when she did appear, the magic was still there. Whether in intimate cabaret shows or special TV appearances, her voice carried the same emotional punch, sometimes weathered, but never diminished. She made headlines in 2015 when she attended the Oscars to celebrate the 50th anniversary of The Sound of Music, standing alongside Julie Andrews. The moment was a reminder that even if she wasn't on stage nightly, she still commanded a place in the cultural conversation. By the late 2010s, she had largely stepped back from performing, focusing instead on spending time with friends, mentoring younger artists, and occasionally making surprise appearances. The daughter of a legend, the maker of her own. For much of her life, the press framed Liza as Judy Garland's daughter, a title she couldn't escape, and one that carried both privilege and burden. But with time, it became clear that Liza had done something few celebrity children manage: she carved out her own distinct identity. She wasn't a copy of her mother. She wasn't even a continuation of her mother's story. She was her own singular force, theatrical, modern, and willing to take risks Judy never could. Her cabaret Sally Bowles remains one of the defining performances of 20th century cinema. Her stage concerts, especially in the 1970s and 1980s, redefined the one-woman show as a high art form. And her resilience, in the face of addiction, illness, heartbreak, and public scrutiny, became as much a part of her legend as her artistry. Friendships and chosen family. In later years, Liza often spoke about the importance of her chosen family, the close circle of friends who provided the stability that romantic partners often couldn't. These friendships sustained her through recovery, illness, and the quieter years of her career. Her bond with entertainers like Michael Feinstein and the late Michael Jackson, though different in nature, reflected her deep need for connection with those who understood the peculiar mix of isolation and adoration that comes with fame. The Last Bow. In 2022, Liza made a surprise appearance at the Academy Awards alongside Lady Gaga, who gently guided her through presenting Best Picture. The moment, tender, respectful, and filled with mutual admiration, became one of the most talked about of the night. It was a perfect coda to a career defined by bravery, vulnerability, and a refusal to give in to life's cruelties. Lady Gaga summed it up with one line that could serve as the inscription on Liza's metaphorical marquee: "I got you." And in that instant, the world saw Liza for what she truly is, not just a survivor, not just an entertainer, but a woman who has lived all of it and still knows how to find the spotlight.